In this tutorial, I'd like to introduce you to a few drawing basics in processing, some just basic shapes and ways to change color and do different things. Let's go ahead and take the trouble to just type everything in now. We're going to create a setup, put our argument area that's blank in setup and our scope. We're going to do a draw. And we have our root as usual. In setup, I'm going to set a size. That's a very typical thing that you do. Let's make it 800 by 600. In draw, I'm going to set a background. Let's just make it black for now. Okay. So you have a number of basic shapes. I don't think I covered this yet, but to get help, you can go to the processing.org. There's a help section. But you can also right-click on, you can highlight and then right-click on words, functions, and you can go find and reference. And it'll tell you about these background. It has a nice help section. From here, you can also go to language, and it'll take you to the, everything that's there. All right. So that's quite useful. Now with draw, some basic shapes. Some basic shapes are, for example, I think we did an earlier tutorial, ellipse. I can make an ellipse, and then I can look that up if I want to, and find, and it tells me its arguments it looks for, A, B, C, D. It's looking for the x coordinate, the y coordinate, the width, and the height. So this is very typical of these basic shapes. You'll see this over and over again. So it's x coordinate. And in this case, there's a thing called ellipse mode, which I'll get into a little bit later. And it basically, the default is in the corner. So your x and y coordinate will be the upper left of the bounding box of your circle. It'll be the upper left corner. So if I want an x at 0 and a y at 0, that's the upper left hand corner of my thing. You'll see a little ball in the corner of my thing, of my sketch. And let's make it the width of 50 pixels and a height of 50 pixels. And if I just run that and I draw that, it's going to draw a thing. Oh, I'm sorry, ellipse mode must be in the center. So that's the center. 0, 0 will be the center of my ellipse. I get confused. I think rect, the default is in the corner. All right. So we can't even see it. So let's move it down a little bit. X coordinate. We're going to move it over 100 pixels, down 100 pixels. Run. There's my ball right there at 100, 100, 100, 100, 50 wide, 50 height. Okay. Now, a couple things to change. We can change the outline of the ellipse. That's the stroke. Okay, and there's 3 functions here that I want to introduce you to. So you can have stroke color by using the stroke. And you notice that every time each of these functions has these parentheses, that's just even ellipse here. That just gives you a space to put arguments in. So stroke is looking for a red, green, and blue, RGB. There's other ways of doing color, but let's just stick to RGB right now. And I introduced earlier this color selector, so you can go and you can get RGB values. So let's say we want to make a green outline. So we're going to have 0 for the red, 255 for the green, and 0 for the blue. So if I run that, you see there's a green stroke around my ball. You can change the weight of the stroke, and you use a function called stroke weight with a capital W. And it's a pixel, so if I go 4 pixels thick and run that, it'll be a more significant stroke or outline border on my circle. Okay. And then there is there's also one called no stroke, and just empty parentheses like that, and that basically just takes the stroke away altogether. And you remember it's in order, so the very last thing I do, even though I designate all these things, the very last thing I do is taking away the stroke, so there will be no stroke. Now this is somewhat important because if you have a lot of different objects you're drawing, sometimes you're going to want to change these things. So if I want to draw another shape later on down the ways, and I don't want any stroke, I have to make sure I put no stroke in front of it, otherwise it'll be just this green stroke. All right. Okay. Now the fill works very much the same as well. So that's the fill color of the object. So you have a fill, and that's RGB. So if I want to have a green outline and maybe a blue inside, you can have a 0, 0, 255, and that's going to fill my circle with the blue color and with a green stroke. Okay. Obviously, there's no fill weight; it just fills everything. But there is a no fill, and that will just leave it without any fill at all. Okay. Now, so that's one thing. That's an ellipse. You have another one called, for example, rect. Same arguments, except I think the xy is at the corner. So if we go 0, 0, 40, 40 for the width and height, it's going to draw me. But see, I didn't change any of these parameters, so it's going to have a green stroke, and it's going to have a blue fill as well, or no fill because I. So yes, it's the corner. Okay, it's a default. So why don't we just talk about that? You have an ellipse mode and a rect mode. So a rect, I can do center. Okay, and that will sit the 0, 0 now would be the center of the rectangle. So you'll notice it's offset there now. Okay, get rid of no fill, comment that out, and maybe have a different fill for the rectangle. We'll see no stroke, and then have a different fill. We'll do say a orange, whatever. I think is it 255, 255. Maybe that's yellow. Yellow. Okay, and then I have to change the rect mode. We'll comment that out there. Okay, and you have line, which is slightly different. So we'll make the stroke. Let's say what is orange? I think it's maybe 127 2550. Okay, and then we'll change the stroke weight as well. Make that a thinner line 2, and then a line is the 2 points, so it's xy point 1 to the xy point 2. So a line, and again, if you're forget these things or you doubt, you can always right click and find a reference, and it will tell you what all the parameters are. Okay, so let's do a line from maybe a little ways down. Say it's 800 by 600. Let's say 500 will be my x over, or let's do 200 over and quite a ways down, like 600 down. Okay, so that's x and the y for the first point, and it'll draw a line from that point to the second point, which is xy. Let's do it. Let's just keep a horizontal line. So we'll make it 200 long, so 400 over, and then just 600 again, like that. So if I do that, oh, it's black because I didn't change my stroke weight line. Stroke weight 2. Well, let's just make a stroke white. Maybe it's too hard to see. Oh, what did I do wrong here? Okay, so let's just do 200 over, 200 over. Oh, maybe. Oh, right. Okay, too far down. So 300, 300. Right, of course, because 600 is the border. There it is. Okay, so there's the line, and there's loads of other shapes. There's a triangle, there's a rect, there's fills. You can go to actually a really good place to go really is the processing tutorials, processing.org. Oops. And go to tutorials maybe and look at some basic shapes, coordinate systems and shapes, and it'll explain a lot of these things. Rectangle, ellipse, so that's a pretty good one there. And there's, I think this is from their book, or there's other things from the book. You can also go to the processing reference and go to these various shapes. So there's arcs, there's points, there's quads, triangles. You can also do more sophisticated shapes as well. And there's some examples. I'm sorry. That's a good place to go as well. Shapes, forms, points and lines, shape primitives. These sorts of things might give you some ideas of how to do some basic things. Quads, ellipses, arcs. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's a lot already to get you started. Basically, what I've sort of gone over is basic shapes. Talked about the coordinate system, and also ways of giving a stroke or a border, as well as a fill color, changing those per shape. Okay, so that'll get us ready for our first project.